Welcome back, everybody, to the Tommy Stone Show. I hope you're doing well. Today's episode is going to be a very important one. We're going to be discussing China, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and how all of these countries right now are trying to put their boot on the throat of America. The most important way to start understanding this conversation and how it affects America is we have to bring it all the way back to 1974. And this is when America and Saudi Arabia came to a deal, and we made an agreement that America would protect Saudi Arabia militarily in order for Saudi Arabia to sell all of their barrels of oil. So every barrel of oil was to be sold in United States dollars out of Saudi Arabia. And at that time, Saudi Arabia was essentially the undisputed oil producer of the world. And again, right now, they still are within the top 2 or 3, I believe. Right now, America actually is the biggest producer of oil in the world after the Venezuela. After we came in and we essentially took over their oil production, we're now the biggest oil producer in the world. Again, Venezuela's oil is incredibly crude, so it takes a long time to refine it to the level that Americans use it at, and then we can actually make it usable. Except that position matters, though. America being the number one producer is incredibly important. But back to Saudi Arabia. Again, we have had this agreement with Saudi Arabia since 1974. So it's been over 50 years this agreement has been in place. And now, over the last 5 years, Saudi Arabia has started to quietly break away from it. And that is actually unacceptable. And this agreement needs to be completely relooked at. We need to understand why Saudi Arabia is doing this, how they're doing it, and what the implications are for America. So the how is actually pretty basic. Saudi Arabia has quietly joined BRICS. And BRICS is a coalition between Brazil, Russia, India, China, and countries in Southern Africa. And the issue with this is that BRICS' entire purpose is to overthrow the US dollar as the global super currency, and inherently the purpose of BRICS is to overthrow the US power as the global superpower and overthrow America. And the reason for this is because America right now gets all of its money through the ability of its dollar to be called the petrodollar. And the petrodollar is a very fancy word for the US dollar because, like I said before, Saudi Arabia has agreed with America that the only way you can purchase oil in the world is to use United States dollars. And this creates an infinite demand for the United States dollars, because in order for any country in the world, even the Vaticans, even in Vatican City, in order for the Vatican and the Pope to be able to buy oil from Saudi Arabia, they have to do so in United States dollars, which means that every country in the world has to have a reserve of United States dollars in order to make these purchases. So this is what gives America this inert power and this infinite power, and why it keeps us as the center of global power, because in order for any country to succeed, they have to buy oil. But this is where China has been slowly chipping away. China right now, since 2020, in 2020, only 4% of barrels of oil were sold in non-United States dollars. Now, the number is 1 out of every 5 barrels of oil are not sold in United States dollars, and every barrel of oil that's not sold in United States dollars is almost exclusively sold in Chinese yen, or yuan, whatever, the Chinese currency. Sorry, not yen. It is exclusively sold in Chinese currency, and this can go a multitude of ways because China also has their own cryptocurrency. They have their own digital payments. So a lot of times it's not even in physical Chinese currency. We're talking about literally the Chinese government buying oil from Saudi Arabia using cryptocurrency. And what's even worse about this is it even gets more in depth with Iran, because now in the Strait of Hormuz, again, Iran has completely controlled the Strait of Hormuz. The only way you can get an oil tanker through the Strait of Hormuz right now is if you pay Iran in Chinese currency or cryptocurrency. They have literally set up a toll booth for the Chinese Communist Party inside of the Strait of Hormuz, and it is not being talked about. That is absolutely ridiculous. I don't know what is going on right now with Iran, why nobody is talking about the fact that China is actually coming for the petrodollar, and it is only getting faster and faster. Like I said, in 2020, since 2020, they've quintupled the amount of barrels of oil that are bought in non-United States dollars from Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states, which is absolutely ridiculous. And on top of that, BRICS, like I said, has expanded from 5 members to 11 members. And this is in 2024. Like I said before, Saudi Arabia has quietly joined. But on top of that, you now have Iran, you have the UAE, you have Egypt, and you also have Ethiopia. So again, not necessarily strong countries independently, but together in a coalition together. Again, the Middle East is essentially one fragmented, massive bunch of countries fighting over the same land. But again, if you get certain pieces of those groups together into a coalition against America, all of a sudden our battles in the Middle East don't look as easy, and they cost a lot more for us to be able to get any sort of infrastructure in there, any sort of oil out of there, any sort of allies, making any sort of peace agreements. It is going to take so much more effort and so much more money if BRICS is essentially now controlling these countries. And again, on top of this, when these countries are now joining BRICS, it's no longer like Iran is acting independently for itself. It is now acting as a member of BRICS and inherently acting as a member for Russia and for China, America's two biggest adversaries right now. And again, with this Iran war, it is only going to strengthen the BRICS system more and more. The Russia-Ukraine war was a huge caveat why BRICS was started and why it gained so much traction with these new countries, because America went into Russia during the start of the war and we seized all of the United States dollar reserves. Like I had mentioned before, if you want to buy oil, you have to have United States dollars reserves. Well, this was unprecedented because America has never gone in and essentially seized a political opponent's reserves. And seizing these reserves made every single country in the world, even some Western allies, look at the United States with a kind of a crooked look and a side eye, being like, why would you do that? Because now it sets the precedent that if you are a political opponent of America, we can come in and seize your reserves and essentially completely cut you off from the world oil trade, which is insane. So every single country since then, again, that was around 2021, 2022 that we did that. Since then, the amount of gold that has been bought by countries has quadrupled. We went from under about 400 tons of gold being bought a year, and under 400 tons of gold being bought per year before the Russia-Ukraine war for decades. The main asset that countries were buying was U.S. Treasury bonds. That means countries were buying in and essentially funding America. That's how they did it. They would buy bonds from the U.S. government and essentially fund our debt. Now, U.S. Treasuries is the second held asset in the world, and the number one asset is gold. And this happened in 2025, where countries, again, they were buying under 400 tons of gold for decades before the Russia-Ukraine war. And now, since then, we've been seeing them buy almost over 1,500 tons of gold per year. And sometimes it's been getting, again, to 16 to 17 to 1,800 tons of gold. In 2023, I believe we hit around 17 or 1,800 tons of gold being bought. That is record amounts. And that is all being fueled by people not only around the Russia-Ukraine war, but from anti-American allies. Again, China is one of the biggest buyers of gold, and they actually do so a lot of times off market. So we don't know how much gold was actually really being bought because China is doing so in illicit ways. They're not putting it on any public balance sheets, and they're not making it public how much gold they're buying, which again, they don't make anything public what they're doing. But that's why the number is so startling, because we have at least quadrupled the amount of gold being bought every single year. Again, we're at about 16 to 1,700 tons right now, and that number is only increasing, even with NATO allies. We have countries like Poland right now wanting to buy 700 tons of gold in the next coming years. And the reason why is because they are threatened by the Russia-Ukraine war, and they are worried that America is not going to be able to defend them enough, essentially. So again, now these two major parts of a puzzle are coming together. The petrodollar, which was the major backing of the United States dollar, is one of the main reasons we get our power globally. That is now starting to crumble because Saudi Arabia is selling it in Chinese currency. And on top of that, we now have gold being bought by nearly every single country in the world over U.S. Treasuries. So nobody's funding our debt, or at least they're kind of funding it, but now at record low levels. And now they're no longer buying our oil in our dollar. So we are losing the two biggest parts of our economy at one time. And this Iran war is only making it worse because in times of uncertainty, investors go and they buy U.S. Treasury bonds, which is a great thing. Except the issue is with the Iran war, we've been seeing a huge influx of people buying these bonds. Except we have now seen 10-year treasury yields, which is essentially the amount of risk that comes with buying a bond or buying the U.S. debt. The amount of risk has increased. Interest rates have increased on 10-year treasury rates. They have increased to above 4% now, which means that the risk is higher than ever, essentially, of us not being able to pay back the debt. Again, we haven't seen levels of our debt ever. We're at almost $40 trillion now the United States is in debt. We haven't seen that type of debt ever with any country in the world, but now it is actually posing a major risk. I mean, not major, again, in the United States. I doubt we will ever default on this debt. I don't think we'll ever come close to that. That is a whole nother video. But again, our interest rates are rising, which means that the risk for buying U.S. bonds is increasing. That is all that means. I mean, you can look at it any other way, but it means interest rates rising, risk is rising. It is more risky to buy these bonds, which means that the Federal Reserve has to increase the interest rate in order to get more people to buy our debt and continue funding the American government and society. So if I'm you, what am I looking to do? Again, not financial advice, but I'm looking into any sort of gold miner. I'm looking into any sort of producer of gold. Again, one of my favorite stock picks right now, GDXJ. It is one of the most important gold miners, probably the biggest gold miner and the most well-known gold miner on the stock market. The reason I love it so much is because, again, every single country in the world is not slowing down their plans to buy gold. And again, it is at unprecedented historical levels after the Russian seizure of reserves. And America has done nothing to satisfy and lower the risk and lower the fear among countries that we were just going to take their reserves. America has done nothing about it. Literally not one word trying to make countries feel better about this. So that's why they're all going to buy the gold, because the United States dollar can be whisked away from you like this now, which is insane. So that's why I'm looking to get all in on gold. I think gold by the end of 2026, we're going to see getting to close to $6,000 an ounce, if not over that. Many banks, including JP Morgan, already believe that gold by the end of 2026 is going to hit $6,300 an ounce. I think that's a little bit too bullish. I think that's a little bit too much growth. Again, that would be an over 20% growth rate this year, alongside last year's already massive year for gold, where we saw essentially grow 50% in just a matter of months. So gold is on a crazy run right now. There are a lot of reasons for why gold is on a crazy run right now. A big reason why is also banks were artificially keeping the price of commodities like silver and gold down for years. JP Morgan settled a near, I believe it was a near $1 billion lawsuit over this. But that's pennies on the dollar compared to what JP Morgan was making spoofing the prices of these metals, which is that's another video, the corruption of banks and how they've corrupted commodities. But right now, we are living in unprecedented times, so make sure you are finding any way to get your hands on some gold. Get in Robinhood, buy some gold, these gold stocks, these miner stocks, and get in on it. But another way I would look at it too is maybe even shorting the S&P. Again, this is probably more far-fetched, but again, with this Iran war right now, we're seeing incredibly inflated stock and equity market prices because of the apparent ceasefire deal. I don't think the ceasefire deal is going to last longer than a week on paper officially, but on top of that, I don't think we're going to see any sort of oil flowing outside of the Strait of Hormuz and coming from our Gulf state allies for at least until the end of the year. So all of the price rallying that has happened around oil now getting back to these companies is nonsense. So again, thank you all so much for watching today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it was a really jam-packed episode, but I really enjoy making these episodes, so make sure to comment down below what you want to see more of, and make sure to subscribe. I'm currently at about like 8 subscribers, so I'm hoping to maybe hit 10 subscribers, but my last video got like 300 views, so I'm very, very happy about that. So thank you guys so much for that. But yeah, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the Tommy Stone Show, and I will see you guys in the next episode.